A Windows 9X installation begins in real mode. It looks kind of like a command prompt. And first it runs ScanDisk. Make sure that the hard drive is all cleaned up and organized and ready for this installation. Then it'll check for existing Windows software. For example, if we're upgrading from Windows 3.1 to Windows 95, it will detect that Windows 3.1 is already in place. Or if we're upgrading from Windows 95 to Windows 98, it will detect that Windows 95 is already in place. It will also ask us at this point whether we want to do a clean installation or whether we would like to upgrade the current Windows operating system. It'll perform several system checks. It'll make sure that all the I/O addresses in the computer are functioning properly and that it can communicate with all of the devices in the computer, and then it will also make sure that all of the RAM is functioning. It'll also load an extended memory driver. In other words, it'll soup up the system a little bit so that all of the information transfer that is about to happen can happen quickly and efficiently. It will look for existing terminate stay resident programs. If SmartDrive.exe is in Windows 3.1 and we're upgrading to Windows 95, Windows 95 will error out. It's not smart enough to turn SmartDrive off. It will just tell you that there's an error and that you need to fix it. If we're upgrading from Windows 95 to 98, it's smart enough to go ahead and turn SmartDrive off for us. And then it'll start up Windows. When we start up Windows, we switch to protected mode. At this point, it'll create the registry, and it'll search for all the hardware. And it'll load all the device drivers for all the detected hardware, and if there's any hardware that it detects and it does not find a device driver, then it will come back and ask you, the user, for those drivers. So one of the choices that we need to make before we start the installation is, are we going to upgrade our current operating system or are we going to do a clean install? The advantages of overwriting Windows 3X and DOS and installing the new operating system, the Windows 95 or 98 on top, is number one, there's less hard drive space used. Number two, application information is copied from the INI files of Windows 3X to the Windows 9X registry. Then the programs are added to the Start menu, and DLLs that exist are going to be in the same Windows system folder. In other words, the DLLs will be created in the same place, and we won't have any configuration problems. Advantages of installing Windows 9X in a separate directory are dual boot capability. In other words, we can keep our Windows 3X operating system, or 3.x operating system, if there are some applications that are working better on Windows 3.x than they work on Windows 95. And also a clean Windows system folder. In other words, we've got a Windows system folder that has its own files for Windows 3X, and we have a Windows system folder that has its own files for Windows 9X. So we need to choose, before we start the installation, whether we're going to be using Windows 3X any longer or whether we just want to do a full upgrade to Windows 9X. One of the nice things about the Windows 9X operating system, and especially the Windows 98 operating system, is the capability of plug and play, and the fact that plug and play actually works. And we'll talk about plug and play in greater detail in our next section.